Hello and welcome to Talk Gnosis. Today we have guest Marguerite Rigoglioso, who's a scholar, a spiritual teacher, a writer. We're going to be talking about Mother Mary. We're going to be talking about Marguerite's new book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary. Divine Feminine Power for Personal Healing and Planetary Awakening. Marguerite, hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, John. Thank you for having me. Great to
See,
be here.
it's a real pleasure. For some behind the scenes the peaks, we had a lot of trouble setting the show up, mostly due to the illness on my part, but we did it, folks. So the Cosmos tried to stop you from seeing the show, so keep that in mind. Can you tell us about your spiritual journey and what role Mary played in it?
Yeah. Well, it's been a long spiritual journey, really. It's been all one long spiritual journey since I was born, I think. And I would just say the highlights are that, I lost my own mother to illness when I was 10 years old. So that was really a big initiation into the other realms. Where does the soul go? Right. And the loss of a mother is a major kind of thing. And I think that ultimately is what put me on the path of searching for the goddess, right? And so over the years, I've gotten involved in sacred feminine spirituality. I started studying about ancient goddesses all over the world. I started going to many on-site places, particularly in Europe and North Africa. And I went to grad school at the California Institute of Integral Studies, and I really dove into the goddess studies there. And along the way, I got reintroduced to Mother Mary as the goddess of the West. And then I started finding out all of this material about her. And I started working with her on increasingly more personal levels to experience deep mothering from her, something that has just stuck with me, for several decades now. And both of them have wound together in my new book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, where I talk about many of the things that I've uncovered about who she was, who she is, as well as what my personal journey has been with her. We could talk about some of those details later.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. Well, you said that the really interesting phrase there, Marguerite, the kind of discovery that Mary is the goddess of the West. And I already mentioned we've talked, actually not enough, about Mary Magdalene on the show. I think if you kind of grab somebody and said, who's the goddess of the West, they'd probably say Mary Magdalene. And she's seen this huge resurgence in the last, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, both in Christian, New Age, and goddess circles. So why hasn't Mother Mary seen this surge in popularity as well?
It's an excellent question, and I think it's the reason is the very thing that we're dealing with, which is deeply entrenched patriarchy. And by that, I don't just mean that there's something wrong with men. I mean a social structure in which the yang is out of balance with the yin, right? And there's a really deep history that goes along with that. That's not just a terrestrial history. Um, but, you know, I think these things were timed such that the sacred family has always had a sense of timing. And I think they've worked on long swaths of time, hundreds and thousands of years time zones, um, to get their message across. And so I think Mary Magdalene, it was understood that Mary Magdalene had to have the great unveiling first because she was more accessible to us as a human woman.
Mm.
And so we could start as a human woman who was on the deeply spiritual path. And so it was easier, in a sense, to start looking into her more authentic history than it was to look into this sort of diaphanous, floating above the earth female figure that we don't really even know if she was a goddess or a woman or a ghost, right? And so it's just taken more time for us to dig in. And also Mary Magdalene, because she presented as a sexual woman on some level, that was a little bit more accessible. Whereas the whole virginity thing with Mother Mary
Right.
made people a little ambivalent about her, if not very ambivalent about her. So suffice it to say, she's been held over there by large swaths of people in, I would say, the postmodern world, while at the same time being the very substance of many of the indigenous and old European traditions, right? Like Mother Mary has been seriously embraced by, you know, um, low, more, I would say, folk substrata in Europe,
Yeah.
and certainly Central and South America, and many places like that. But in terms of the intellectual world and the goddess spirituality world, we haven't quite known what to make of her. And so my book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary, is that what to make of her, so that we can understand, oh my gosh, there are such tremendous riches in Mother Mary as a personal healer, as a spiritual mentor, and as a planetary awakener, as the subtitle of the book suggests.
Yeah. Can you tell us how Mary's spiritual role actually started with her mother, Anna?
Yeah, yeah. In my previous book, The Mystery Tradition of Miraculous Conception, I go into a very long discussion of Mary's mother, Anne, or Anna, or Hannah, as she originally would have been called in Hebrew. And the fact is that Mother Mary's mother, Anne, Hannah, was herself a priestess. She was a very high holy woman, and she was a practitioner of divine birth, parthenogenesis. And that is what we see in some of, one of the other suppressed gospels that forms the basis of my study in the mystery tradition of miraculous conception. But we learn that Anne divinely conceived Mother Mary. And then Mother Mary divinely conceived Jesus when Mother Mary was about 12 to 16 years old. So we're talking about something that I uncovered in ancient Greece and ancient North Africa, a lineage or lineages of priestesses who practiced this particular conception technology specifically to bring in a high level avatar. Mary was the high level avatar brought in by her mother, and then Jesus was the high level avatar brought in by Mary.
Yeah. So the West understands Jesus as an incarnated God, an avatar, quite easily. You grab somebody off the street, regardless if they're a Christian, atheist, pagan, secular, Hindu, doesn't matter what, right? And, demand some facts about Jesus. Well, they'll tell you people think that he's God incarnated. When you're talking about the patriarchy, we often view Mary. We're getting close to Christmas as we record this show. It's just kind of this conduit for Jesus, right? Jesus just kind of passes through her on his way to Earth, and then she can jump out of the story, right?
That's right.
I mean, maybe we see her at the crucifixion, but even then, she's often downplayed. But can you tell us about Mary as an incarnated goddess, as an avatar?
Yes. And so for this, I looked at the suppressed gospels. We might call some of them Gnostic, but things like the infancy gospel of James, which I just referred to earlier, is where we get the material about Anne's conception of Mary. The gospel of Bartholomew, the gospel of Philip, where we do see her mentioned in much bigger ways. And then her forgotten biographies, the life of the Virgin by possibly Maximus, who was a very great cleric, the life of the Blessed Virgin. And, there are other ones that are probably based on lost texts as well. So there are some of these that we have, and there are probably many others that were lost. But so that's my main sourcing for this material. And what you come to find out is that she was an amazing person. I mean, not only was she an active instigator of Jesus coming to the planet, but she taught him. And for that, I also look to the materials from a now deceased saint, a Hindu saint named Sri Kaleshwar. She taught him while he was in the womb. She taught him while he was a child, and she was his soulmate while he was in the midst of his ministry. And then we find out that she was a healer. She was an exorcist. And then she became a spiritual mentor of Mary Magdalene and all of the women and all of the men. So she was essentially the first pope, if we want to call her that, after the resurrection. And not only that, but the resurrection, according to Sri Kaleshwar, was owing to her yogic powers working in tandem with Jesus. So this resurrection was not just something that happened, but again, like his conception, his rebirth was orchestrated by Mother Mary's yogic techniques.
Yeah, well, why don't we just talk about that right now? Because again, the talk about coming close to Christmas, right? Everybody associates Mary with Jesus' birth, but not Mary with the resurrection, maybe with the crucifixion, but not the resurrection. So, yeah, please tell us more about that.
Well, and this was a stunning and wonderful revelation that I received when I went and learned the Holy Womb Chakra system in the summer of 2017 at the Divine Mother Center in Laytonville, California, which is one of the extant ashrams that keeps Sri Kaleshwar's teachings alive, the other being in Penakonda, India. And my teacher, Cindy Lindsay, presented these extraordinary materials about the Holy Womb Chakra, mantras that empower it, and sacred drawings and things like that. And on one of the days, she revealed all of the material that Sri Kaleshwar knew from past life memory
Mm.
and from the ancient palm leaf manuscripts, which is that Mother Mary knew the yoga of Atmakandana Yoga and Parakaya Pravesh, which taken together are bringing a dead soul, back to life. And by splitting part of its soul out of the body, to preserve it out there and leave only a little bit of it in the body. And then she knew how to work with mantras. And because her womb and her abilities were so powerful, when she started engaging with this mantra practice, essentially with Jesus on her lap, much in the way that the Pietà depicts it, right after the crucifixion and right before he was interred behind the rock of the tomb, she resurrected him. She brought his soul pieces back together, just like Isis brought Osiris's soul pieces back together, because Isis was Mother Mary's previous incarnation. So she was already according to Steiner, okay, Rudolf Steiner, she was already perfecting these techniques throughout lifetimes. And finally, in her final lifetime before her full ascension into goddesshood, she perfected the resurrection capability. And Sri Kaleshwar says that she literally resurrected him body and soul, in that he appeared to the apostles and then he went to India with Mary Magdalene. Whether you adhere to that timeline or whether you adhere to the timeline simply that his soul was reconstituted and was rebirthed, in the other plane of existence, I leave that up to everyone. The point is that some sort of resurrection happened, and you can adhere to whatever provides the medicine for you in this regard. But Mother Mary was the one who gathered back Jesus's smashed to smithereens parts by that torturous experience of the crucifixion. And she restored him as a soul, as a being, so that he could continue to work with our earth plane as a healer and as an awakener.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about Mary as a spiritual teacher, both before the birth of Jesus, during his ministry, but also maybe more importantly, I guess it's all equal, but I think what might surprise a lot of people is she had a spiritual ministry after the death and resurrection and ascension of Jesus. So if you can tell us all, about her career as a spiritual teacher.
That's right. She did have a brilliant career. And again, all of these details can be found in my new book, The Secret Life of Mother Mary. It's very readable. I highly recommend it. And I also provide guided meditations to allow you to have a lived experience of Mother Mary, that you can access these for free online. And what I describe there is that before, while he was in utero, she always had a very active spiritual life, where she really only slept 3 hours a day, according to Sri Kaleshwar, and that is not far off from what we find in some of her biographical material in the Christian sources. And then she would basically just pray, talk to the divine beings, the angels, talk to Mother Divine, and so forth. And she was able, through these processes and these mantras that she would continue, to convey the codes of this information to Jesus when he was in her womb. Okay. And then Sri Kaleshwar basically, fast forwards to the ministry time of Jesus, where Jesus would, according to him, whenever he would do any kind of healing on anyone, he would call on his mother. and he would call on using a mantra that was like connected with her. Okay. And, the two of them worked together in doing whatever healings there were. And in these teachings that would be itinerant, they would go around in the ancient world, and be speaking and teaching and demonstrating and baptizing. Mother Mary did baptisms, which is, clearing the soul and raising it up to another vibration for it to be able to receive its divine light and receive the awakening teachings, that kind of thing. Again, there are descriptions of her taking away evil spirits from people, healing them from afflictions. And then she was the guardian and guide of the whole early Christian, so to speak, community, where she would stay anchored either in Ephesus originally or Jerusalem, and they would go out to the known world, and they would then come back at Easter time, and she would talk to them about what had happened. She mentored Mary Magdalene, and the two of them really perfected working with the holy oils, the holy essential oils that were, to my understanding and that of others, including like William Henry, they were hallucinogenic oils. So they would be put on a person either during lifetime or at the point of death to help the body and help the soul have an awakening to the other realms of reality. Um, and so, she was just she was also an exemplar of all the teachings of kindness toward strangers, kindness toward enemies, and so forth. And she was a rallier among Joseph's earlier children by a marriage. She was is a stepmother, essentially, to these children who are called Jesus' brothers and sisters, but they weren't through her. They were through Joseph. They were step brothers and sisters, essentially. All right. So does that give you, enough of a view? And again, there are so many more details. I highly recommend that people look into the book because it will totally surprise and transform your idea of not only Mary, but what's possible for all women and all people today.
Yeah, it is an extremely readable book, folks. So I highly recommend it. Moving on. So you mentioned Mary's ascension to full goddesshood. Can you tell us more about what was so special about Mary's passing and its connection to her divinity?
Yeah. So according to the biographies, it seems that she probably crossed out of her body when she was in her early 80s. So she had a nice long life. She was tended to by special virgins who left their wealthy families and would be with her. Um, and she knew when it was the time for her death. She did have that. She had the Siddhic abilities, the miraculous abilities, so she would know when it was going to be her time. And they migrated to Bethlehem and Jerusalem and so forth to have this final passage and ascension. And what was happening here was that a process by which Mother Mary was going light body or rainbow body, what is sometimes referred to with Buddhist monks and things like that, where literally the soul leaves the body, great lights, sometimes rainbow lights are seen above the house where the person is making this transition, and then their body pretty quickly disappears.
Hmm.
And that is exactly what happened with Mother Mary. One of the narrative cycles about this, what's called her dormition, it really gives a tremendous details. And I go through this in The Secret Life of Mother Mary about the stages of awareness that she goes through as her soul is passing out of her body. It really is quite breathtaking. We see the rungs of reality, the domains, the higher dimensions that she goes through. She is assisted by great beings on the other side, including Jesus, and including Jesus and including others who have crossed over before her, even her mother. So it's described literally the steps by which she goes up until she finally merges essentially with the pleroma, the realm of great light. So is able to become one with the goddess, and she is also able to retain her personality, identity, and structure as Mother Mary so that she can traverse into the earth plane back and forth and be a guide to people, a healer from that side, and a conduit to help people in their own ascension process.
Yeah. My tradition, the Onite tradition, Johannite tradition, however you want to pronunciate it, it has legends about the name John actually being a title for spiritual teachers and leaders, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because it's actually a Hebrew word. It means something like God is gracious or the grace of God, what have you. But can you tell us about the name of Mary not actually being a name, but a similar idea? It's a title, and of course, the word Mary means something in Hebrew. Can you tell us about this? The Marys with an S?
Yeah, and I love that, John, because you're also named after that, you know. Well, um, and I took the confirmation name Mary. So yes, these names are originally titles. They're originally sacred titles. Merlin, you know what I mean? And so Mary's name is transliterated and brought into the English language as Mary. But prior to that, in the Greek, it's Maria, and prior to that, in the Aramaic, it's Mariam, and in the Hebrew, it's Miriam, and prior to that, it's really Mary, transliterated as Meri or Mery from the Egyptian term, which was an honorific title connected with the deities, and it meant beloved of,
Huh.
or it meant one who loves, one who is beloved by the God, and one who is love itself. So it reflects that triple unity of loving, being loved, and being loved. And it was again closely, it would be put as an epithet for a king or a queen, like Mary Totten or something like that, right? And so it meant beloved of. And so it came down from Egypt, you know, over the centuries and millennia into the Hebrew tradition again as a title, you know, as was Sarah or Sarah, Sarai. It meant priestess or princess or, you know, something of that nature. So, and she was an ancient figure associated with divine birth as well. So that's what the name Mary carries, the loving energy. And it also carries the wisdom and the womb wisdom. And so that's why we have so many women supposedly named Mary in the, you know, Miriam. We have Miriam, the sister of Aaron and Moses. And then we have Mary Magdalene, Mary Salome, Mother Mary's sister was a Mary, and that explains why her sister would be a Mary. You don't name two children the same name. So, yeah, I mean, it designated who they were or who they became in their spiritual paths.
Yeah. It's been a wonderful exploration of this so very important figure. And on my own spiritual journey, kind of being brought up in a nice religious environment of low church Protestantism. At the same time, that is definitely a community where Mother Mary is missing.
That's
And
right.
well, wonderful. Again, I'm not knocking up that particular tradition, beautiful tradition in many ways. So, just as an adult, kind of discovering her has been very important for my own spiritual journey, which kind of leads me into my final question, which is if you can talk to us about Mary as a healer and mentor, not just 2,000 years ago when she is incarnated, but, right here, right now.
Yeah. Well, these beings continue to have power. Because they have a mission with planet Earth, with humanity. They know what's gone on here. They know the good, the bad, and the ugly. They know that we are originally divine angelic beings. They're trying to help us to liberate from the shackles of the oppression and the torture that we've been in for thousands of years. And they want us to access back our anthropos, our divine human self and presence. So they have a mission, they have a ministry here, and that continues on. And so Mother Mary can work with you at whatever level of vibration you are. And that is a maxim that we find in the Gospel of Philip. right? As you see her at higher and higher rungs, you are at higher and higher rungs of spiritual vibration, okay? So that's why this book, it's opening the sight to her at much higher rungs than we've been used to. And that's really important so that we can work with her. And I personally have worked with her as a mother, somebody to hold me when I'm feeling panic, somebody to be there in the operation room when I woke up from a surgery, right? You know, those kinds of things. I most recently had a dramatic medicine experience where she was with me for the healing of the loss of my mother, right? So she's really available because they know we have to do this personal healing as an intimate part of the spiritual advancement. You cannot do one without the other. So it all has to go together. And so she's here on that level. And then I just feel that she's been here as a great teacher for me. You know, I can tune into information from her in my meditations for my personal life and for my ministry, right? And for my spiritual path, and Magdalene as well. I work very closely with her. In fact, I have a Marian Magdalene priestess training that I'm running for the first time now, and I'm going to be running it again in 2025, precisely to encourage and have methods by which women can connect with these two beings on these multiple levels. And ultimately, you know, what I and many are looking for is, well, how about that ascension? What is that all about? What does it take? What does it feel like? What would it feel like to be on planet Earth and off planet Earth in an ascended state? Tell me more. These are the very ways in which these beings are present to help us now. They're available. All we have to do is ask them.
Mm. Perfect, perfect. I think that's the powerful point to wrap up on, Marguerite. Everybody who's watching or listening, you can go down and you will see all the links to all Marguerite's stuff, including her new book. If you're watching this on YouTube, you will see we have sevensistersmysteryschool.com up there on the screen. So go there and check it out. Check out all of her links. Marguerite, thanks so much for coming on the show. And before we sign off, I'll do a quick plug for myself. Well, not for me, but for the show that you're listening or watching. Patreon.com/Gnostic. That helps you financially support the show. What you get in return for supporting the show. We don't actually give anything like other podcasts, but if people don't sign up there and donate, then we can't do the show anymore. So you get the show, I guess. So thank you for helping. You can also do one-time donations at paypal.me/Gnostic. I understand that these are messed up times and it can be difficult to part with some cash. So if you want to help the show, but hey, I have no money, tell people about the show. Mouth the Year, still very powerful. Share it on your social media. Take this episode, send it to somebody who will love it, and somebody who will love Marguerite's work. Okay, thanks so much.
Thank
Farewell.
you. Lots of love. Bye bye.
Bye.